In the early morning of January 8, 2003, a routine commuter flight prepared for takeoff in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was Air Midwest Flight 5481, a small Beechcraft 1900D. Just 2 crew members, 19 passengers. A simple hop to Greenville, South Carolina. There was nothing unusual about the weather, nothing unusual about the aircraft, nothing unusual about the mission. But hidden deep within the airplane were 2 deadly problems. One inside the cockpit, and one at the very tail of the aircraft. Problems that would remain invisible until the moment it was too late to correct them. The aircraft lined up at runway 18R just after 8:45 a.m. First Officer Katie Lorenda was at the controls. She was young, ambitious, and highly regarded by instructors. Captain Katie Wickman sat in the left seat, monitoring the takeoff. The power levers advanced, the engine surged, and the small commuter jet began accelerating down the runway. Inside the cabin, passengers felt a gentle vibration as the wheels rolled faster and faster. Business travelers, college students, commuters heading to work. No one had any idea that the airplane was carrying a hidden threat inside its very structure. At rotation speed, the first officer pulled back on the yoke, and the aircraft's nose rose sharply, far more sharply than expected. The pitch-up was aggressive, almost violent. The captain immediately felt something was wrong. The aircraft climbed steeply, too steeply. Within seconds, the stall warning horn blared. The plane was climbing at an angle the pilots could not control, and they hadn't even reached 200 feet. Captain Wickman pushed forward on the controls, again, harder. But the airplane refused to lower its nose. Something in the tail was fighting them. As the Beechcraft reached a dangerously high angle of attack, the wings began to buffet. The stall warning continued. The engine strained as the aircraft lost speed. Inside the cockpit, both pilots struggled, physically forcing the yokes forward, but the nose barely responded. The situation became hopeless in seconds. The airplane shuddered, rolled left, and entered a stall. There was no altitude to recover. The Beechcraft dropped out of the sky, striking a hangar just 37 seconds after liftoff. There were no survivors. The tragedy was sudden, violent, and seemingly inexplicable. And when investigators arrived at the crash site, they immediately knew something was deeply unusual. Because this wasn't a normal stall. The aircraft had fought the pilots, defying their commands. What they uncovered would expose a chain of errors, hidden in maintenance, in the manuals, and even in the airline's weight calculations. Errors that had slowly built up over time until Flight 5481 stood no chance. The first major finding was weight. The aircraft was overloaded, not by a small amount, but by over 600 pounds, more than the aircraft was certified to carry. But how? 19 passengers on a commuter plane shouldn't overload anything. Investigators soon discovered that the airline had been using passenger weight averages that were nearly a decade out of date. Real-world passenger weights had risen significantly, but the official charts had not been updated. So the airplane was heavier than anyone on board realized. And more importantly, the weight was concentrated too far toward the back of the aircraft. This shifted the center of gravity to a dangerously aft position. And when the center of gravity moves too far back, pitch control becomes extremely sensitive, and stall behavior becomes vicious. But this alone would not fully explain why the pilots could not push the nose down. There had to be a second factor, and it was found inside the tail. At the very back of the aircraft is a mechanism called the elevator control system. This is what allows pilots to raise and lower the nose. It turned out that a recent maintenance operation had gone terribly wrong. Just 24 hours before the crash, mechanics had performed a critical adjustment on the elevator control cables, but the procedure was not done correctly. Investigators found that the cables had been misrigged, reducing the amount of downward elevator movement by a shocking percentage, limiting the pilot's ability to push the nose down. When the aircraft pitched up during takeoff, the pilots simply did not have enough authority to counter it. The aircraft was doomed the moment it left the ground.